After the past 2 weeks, is Bryce Young playing his way into the starting job in 2025? We'll talk about it right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for watching the show here on YouTube and listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where every Wednesday throughout the regular season, I'm right here on the show answering your weekly Wednesday mailbag questions. All you got to do is either at me or DM me over on Twitter at Julian Council to get your questions in for tomorrow's edition of the weekly Wednesday mailbag right here on Locked On Panthers. Today's episode of Locked On Panthers is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start this season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. They say in the NFL that is a week-to-week league. You never get too high. You can never get too low. And certainly we're all very guilty of getting too high and too low throughout the 18-week journey that is the NFL regular season. And this has been especially a very interesting season for the Carolina Panthers, even though they sit here at 3-9. Unless they win out, this will not be a playoff team in 2024. But we talked about expectations back in the summer. Triple your win total. That is what a lot of people were hoping to see. It was the moniker I placed on this season. And they still, with Philadelphia on Sunday, another trip against Tampa Bay. They have Arizona at home, at Atlanta, and the Dallas Cowboys. 3 wins are out there, I think, in these final 5 games. It's not going to be easy. We totally understand that, but it's possible that Carolina ends the season on a high note by finishing off at 6-11, which of course is much better than the 2-15 that they had to go through last year, that you had to go through last year, and the way things started off this season with Bryce Young being benched after 2 weeks and wondering, did the Carolina Panthers already in their hopeful franchise quarterback's career here in Carolina? Which brings us to today's conversation, as things have changed here over the last month, but really the last 2 weeks where Bryce Young has been, I don't want to say spectacular because that may be a little over the top, but he has been very good against the Kansas City Chiefs last week. And then on Sunday against Tampa Bay Buccaneers, giving the Panthers a chance to win both those games against 2 teams, at least one of them, KC, who's already in the playoffs, but another in Tampa, who I think will go on to win the NFC South and be the representative of the division in the playoffs here in the NFC. For Bryce Young to play as well he's played, that has changed the calculus for what the Panthers are going to do potentially after this season is over. And understand, there are still 5 more weeks, and week-to-week league, we need to see how things play out in Philly and in Tampa and here at home against Arizona and Dallas, and then in the finale on the road at Atlanta before making any sort of declarative statements about what's going to happen. And yeah, I know, Julian, you've made plenty of declarative statements. Well, that's the blessing and the curse of having to do a daily podcast and talk about this team every single day. If I only had to talk about the team once or twice a week, it would be a lot easier. But I got to fill 30 minutes of time 5 days a week. So kind of hard not to give you my thoughts on something and hard to avoid putting out my opinions. And then, of course, coming back and having them thrown in my face. But that's the beauty of this whole situation we have here on Locked On Panthers. And I thank you all for tuning in on YouTube and listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. But going back to last Wednesday, ESPN.com, Jeremy Fowler, Dan Graziano, they were discussing what the Panthers' next steps may be with Bryce Young. And Fowler started off saying, a month ago, I would have said the chance of Young remaining on the Panthers roster was slim. And while Young being their 2025 starter is hardly a slam dunk, the Panthers have a lot to sort out. He has certainly given Carolina something to think about. He has a good month starting games out of merit instead of necessity. The Panthers made Young earn the job week to week, but he's making a case to be the starter for the rest of the season. He's coming off his best game, and that's coming off of the game against Kansas City with 263 yards, 1 touchdown pass against a strong Chiefs defense. But if Carolina believes it can replace Young with better talent in 2025, it will. There's no need to make that determination yet, and Young could serve as a good bridge or competition for another quarterback. Dan Graziano then chimed in saying agreed. He's playing better, and given that he'll be entering only year 3 of a 4-year fully guaranteed rookie contract, there's little reason to think Carolina will move on unless they get blown away by a trade offer. I reserve the right to change my mind if Young falls apart down the stretch, but he appears to have turned a bit of a corner. So that's last Wednesday, November 27th, Jeremy Fowler and Dan Graziano, NFL insiders for ESPN, are saying that, where Young has earned the job. It's not been given to him. He has earned it over the last couple of weeks. He has improved coming off of what was then, and I still think is, his best performance as a Carolina Panther in that close loss against KC, to where the Panthers could still upgrade if they felt like they could find an upgrade, or they could decide, no, we're going to keep him unless we get blown away by an offer, which is where at least Graziano felt like things were trending, as long as in the last couple of weeks, Bryce Young continued to show the progress that he had shown in those previous games. Then on Sunday morning, watching NFL Network, Ian Rappaport talking to Tom Pelissero and Mike Garafolo comes out and says this: from my understanding, he's gone a long way in showing this Panthers organization why they took him number 1 overall. He's getting in and out of the huddle better. He is diagnosing defenses better, and simply, he is playing better. Quote, as far as the future goes, from what I understand, do not expect the Carolina Panthers to draft a quarterback early next year. It does seem if Bryce Young continues to progress as he's been, that he has earned the opportunity to be their starter next year, and everyone hopes beyond. So Wednesday seemed like things, at least from the sources Fowler and Graziano were getting, were a little bit more on the fence, where Rappaport saying he keeps doing this, he's earning that right to be the guy in 2025, and a far more, in my opinion, positive spin put out there by Ian Rappaport than put out there by Jeremy Fowler and Dan Graziano. So Bryce Young, simply, as Rappaport has put it, is playing better, getting into that out of the huddle quicker, commanding the offense, showing that kind of leadership that this team wanted to see from him. And going back to the locker room last week when I was in there following the Chiefs game, Robert Hunt saying, we all are seeing what Bryce is doing. Chuba Hubbard said that after the game in Munich, when Dave Canales came out and said that Bryce Young was making a statement, then said it again after that loss against Kansas City, and then didn't even have to say anything after this game. It's already known right now that Bryce Young is the quarterback moving forward this week, and you would think the week after that, even if he has a poor performance, it does not appear that they're going back to Andy Dalton, which makes all of this just so crazy how it's played out, to where I felt like he was benched early. Then it looked like, okay, maybe that was the right decision based off of how Dalton played. And then even when Andy wasn't playing as well as he had in the first 2 games against the Raiders and against the Bengals, Dave Canales still saying, this is our quarterback. Then the car accident happens. He has no choice but to play Bryce. Didn't seem to have a lot of confidence in him based off of the play calling, but maybe he wanted to see Bryce show more confidence in himself and really improve throughout the practice field, be able to get those opportunities. I don't know. But what I do know is Bryce Young has been the best he's ever been in Carolina the last month, where he has put back to back solid performances against the Saints in that win, against the Giants in that win. And then really, when you look at those 2 games, statistically, it wasn't like his numbers were all that impressive. You watch how he played against New Orleans, you understood, all right, Bryce Young, he looks different. He's playing well. The Giants game didn't play as well, but took care of the football, made a big throw there late in that game to bleed some of that clock down so that New York could not go down the field and score a touchdown instead of that field goal that they kicked to take it into overtime. But then when you get out of the bye, he's put up the kind of numbers that you want to see and has continued to play as well, really better than he had played in those 2 prior games prior to the bye against the Giants in Germany and against the Saints there at home. And when you look over at PFF, since week 9, Bryce Young has the third best passing grade, according to Pro Football Focus. He's the sixth highest graded quarterback, and he has made 11 big-time throws. Looking at the past 2 weeks, though, these great performances he's had against Kansas City and against Tampa Bay, he has the top passing grade in the National Football League. So according to PFF, Bryce Young has been the best quarterback in the NFL the last 2 weeks. And just looking as far as passing the ball goes, but looking at his overall grade, he's second, only behind our old friend Sam Darnold, and has thrown the most big-time throws in the NFL with 9. So Bryce is the best we have ever seen him in Carolina. There's still a ton of bad on tape, and maybe this is just the progression finally happening for a quarterback that really struggled to adapt last year in what was not a great situation. And even with the changes made this offseason, with Canales coming in, the new receivers out wide, and the more emphasis in a running game, at least the perceived emphasis in a running game, he was not able to gel with that early on. He's gotten the break, and he's come back out. He's played well. He's had confidence in himself. Teammates have confidence in him. And, of course, his coach and his coordinator, Dave Canales, also have that confidence in him moving forward to where we're having this conversation. It's looking like Bryce Young is going to be the quarterback again in 2025. And quite honestly, that's what everyone should have wanted to happen at the end of the day. This is the best case scenario for the Carolina Panthers, not trying to go after a quarterback in what is perceived by all of the draft experts as a weak quarterback class. Do you really want to go after someone in this class when it's not perceived to be a great class? And the last not great class was 2022. And we've seen that the only quarterback that was taken in that draft class in the first round, Kenny Pickett, is no longer in Pittsburgh. Malik Willis has had a better go about it in his second opportunity there in Green Bay, but he's not going to be the Packers quarterback, and we'll see what options he has this offseason. But overall, that turned out to not be a great draft class. Desmond Ridder, he's no longer in Atlanta. Sam Howell, he is no longer in Washington. A bunch of changes already for that young class there in 2022. Matt Corral, not here in Carolina, not even in the league. I think Cam Ward, I think Shedeur Sanders is going to have a lot more success than those players have had so far. I just can't sit here with absolute confidence and feel like those guys are sure bets. But who is? It can be a crapshoot at times. I don't necessarily believe in that. There are reasons why guys have success. There are reasons why guys don't have success. And I think a large part of why Bryce Young did not have success in Carolina last year was because of the situation. I think a big reason why he's having success now is, well, getting the opportunity last year to play a lot, but also getting a mental reset, whether that was the plan or not for Dave Canales when he decided to bench Bryce Young, but him really understanding the game and the concepts, buying into what he's asked to do, and things just slowing down for him. Experience, that can do a hell of a lot for a player and really for anyone in their line of work. I don't think any of you, maybe you were excellent at your job day one. Now, Bryce Young wasn't, and he has grown into it, and he's getting better. And that is the best thing for the Carolina Panthers moving forward. But 5 more weeks. Again, week-to-week league. Got to see what he does this week, the week after that, until the season's over, and then truly evaluate things and figure out what the Carolina Panthers want to do moving forward heading into 2025. My hope is Bryce keeps playing like this, and it's a no-brainer to bring him back in 2025. But it's still possible that we see what we saw in the past, even though I have a hard time thinking that's going to be a reality for Carolina here in the final 5 weeks of Bryce Young under center. Dave Canales spoke to the media on Monday a little bit about Bryce Young and his confidence, and also gave an injury update on Jalen Coker and Jadavion Sanders, and talked about why the run defense is struggling here in Carolina this season. We'll get to all that here in just a moment on Locked on Panthers. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, Texas, and here in North Carolina. And if you live in South Carolina, do not worry. Whenever you come up to a Panthers game, you can go ahead, download Prize Picks, and play right here in the Old North State. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play. $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks is the best way to win real money this this football season. Which players are going off, which ones aren't. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on Prize Picks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Dave Canales reviewed the film following the Carolina Panthers' 26-23 overtime loss on Sunday at home against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a game where they really gave it away. If you look at it, they were dominant in the first three quarters, then gave a ton of yardage there defensively in the fourth quarter, scoring drive on all three of those drives, including one that tied the game there as time expired in regulation. And then in overtime, got a big stop. Panthers fumbled. Could not get that stop, could not stop the run as Rachaad White went down the sideline 38 yards, setting up the game-winning field goal for Tampa, who is now tied at 6-6 atop the NFC South with the Atlanta Falcons, who are just plummeting down the standings as they lose their third straight game, losing to the Chargers there in Atlanta on Sunday, a team that I think Carolina absolutely can beat Week 18, and a team that I do not see making the playoffs. Kirk Cousins throwing 4 interceptions, but sticking to what Dave Canales saw in the film after watching the game on Sunday, he came out and saw about 3 quarters of good football. We know that we have to finish with consistency, and that has been the issue the last 2 weeks where the Panthers have been in position. I would say they could have won the game a week ago against Kansas City, and I'll say that they should have won the game yesterday against Tampa Bay, but did not happen. So here we are reviewing it and trying to figure out what went wrong. Now, injury updates, 2 guys that did not play on Sunday, Jalen Coker and JT Sanders. Dave Canales came out and said, quote, the hope is to get them back up this week. So that is the hope, as Coker's missed the last 2 weeks with, I believe, what's it been, a hamstring? I can't remember what the injury, quad. He's been out the last 2 weeks. And JT Sanders had the neck injury. That was a really scary moment. He was carted off, taken off a backboard into the local area hospital, was then back in the stadium after that on that Sunday against Kansas City about 8 days ago. So those 2 guys look like they'll be back, and it'll be great news for Bryce Young as he tries to continue to build chemistry and confidence with that young receiving core plus Adam Thielen. Nick Scott, he has been designated to return off of IR with a hamstring injury. Dave Canales said that he looked great last week and that they will evaluate him this week, but it's also a matter of the depth chart. When you look at the safeties, while he's been seen as their third starter, according to Jero Vero, is there a spot for him right now on the roster as he's trying to come back? And he's also, again, a guy going to be a free agent after this year. Is it that necessary to get him back out there in the final couple of weeks? We'll see. Stephon Sullivan, he did go out with a knee injury, and Dave Canales said it was a significant one, that he'll be out for a while. So it looks like Stephon Sullivan is done for the year here in Carolina. Unfortunate, as he was on the practice squad, was elevated on Sunday to help out, as the Panthers did not have JT Sanders out there to play tight end. Run defense has been a problem all year long. Carolina gave up 236 yards rushing on Sunday. They are dead last in the NFL against the run. And I don't really feel like in the next 5 weeks that's going to improve, considering who their opponent is on Sunday, that being the Philadelphia Eagles, knowing that they have to play Arizona, who wants to run the ball as well. Atlanta is a team that will want to run the ball. It's just going to be who they are. And we talked about a couple of weeks ago when the defense was really struggling, trying to figure out what areas could they improve. What they get healthier, the pass rush could improve. And we've seen that with DJ Wonnum back out there, Amari Barno getting a sack on Sunday. And really out of nowhere, they have 9 sacks the last 2 weeks. And hopefully the secondary, when you get guys healthy like Dane Jackson, who actually was benched in favor of Charles Smith-Wade, and we'll talk more about that here in just a moment. When you get him out there, Jordan Fuller back out there, that will help the pass defense. The one area, though, that was just not going to improve was the run defense, because they just don't seem to have the guys up there. And Canales does not believe it's the scheme. And the players have come out and said it's not the scheme. This is not a Jero Rivero. This is on us. And when reviewing film, Dave had this say about the run defense, end quote, when you talk about the run game, it's the full group, because everyone has a responsibility and a fit, and it works all the way across the board. I think that when you trust that everyone is doing their job and is in their gap, then you don't have to jump out of yours. Stay in your gap, own your leverage. The plays will come back to you if we all work together. So this is not a unit that's working together. This is not a unit where guys are trusting others to fill their responsibility as far as their gap goes. And here we go. The worst run defense in the league. And that's not been a great run defense the last couple of years. And it all coincides to when Carolina, or really when Ron Rivera was told by Dave Tepper that, I like a 3-4 because that's what we run in Pittsburgh. The Panthers have had poor run defenses since then. Is it the scheme? Well, they said no. But it's just interesting. Funny coincidence that they've been bad against the run since they have no longer been a primarily 4-man front. And we'll see if Joe Rivera comes back next year. If he doesn't, what kind of defense will be run? Either way, they need to get more talent there up front on the defensive line. Linebacker, I think Trevin Wallace, Josie Jewell are going to be the starters again next season, and I wouldn't blame them for the issue. I really think it starts up with those guys up front on the defensive line. And, getting Derek Brown could help as well moving forward. Only had him for one game this season. Sam Franklin had an interesting moment where he was apparently running over to the Bucs locker room looking for a fight. I saw just a video of that. Dave was asked about this, and he said that he talked to him this morning, and Sam knows that you can't do that, and that was a mistake. So it doesn't seem to be that big of a deal. Maybe he'll get fined by the league. I don't know. Adam Thielen looked like he caught a touchdown, but then the NFL said no because they did not have enough camera angles. Mike Pereira brought that up on the broadcast there on Fox, and then a pool reporter, Joe Person was operating as a pool reporter, Joe Person of The Athletic. There's only one person, a pool reporter, who will get to talk to, because they're pooling. It's like P-O-L-L, like pool, like you jump in a pool, swim in a pool. Like they are going to get the pool report for all the reporters. So they're going to ask the referee afterwards what happened in situations, and then everyone can go and then get that information from the questions that he asked. So Joe, he asked about the situation there, and the officials said they did not have enough camera angles. So yeah, it's on Fox, and that's kind of crazy. And Dave didn't really have much to say about it other than if the ruling on the field is that it's incomplete, it's hard to overturn it because it has to be indisputable video evidence. And unfortunately for the Panthers, they did not have indisputable video evidence in that game, and that took off 4 points off the board. Now, the missed field goals didn't help as well. He still has confidence in Eddie Pinheiro. I felt like that was a touchdown. I also said, and I'm sure it upset somebody because someone's always upset by something. I said that Adam Thielen should have caught the ball straight up right away. Shouldn't have bobbled it. And there's no conversation, which is true. What also is true is that should have been ruled a touchdown. So understand, I'm on your side. Stop crying. Bryce Young, his confidence level, as we've seen the last couple of weeks, has really gone up. And Steve Reed, Associated Press, asked Canales about it, what he's seen from Bryce, and he said, quote, just decisiveness and having a plan, things that we talk about through the week that come alive on game day, and they've been in these critical situations for the last 2 weeks. Just a great job of taking those conversations, taking the practice reps, and then applying them to high-pressure situations. So Bryce continues to improve, and he did say that Bryce will be the quarterback again on Sunday, which really did not need to be asked. Charles Smith-Wade got an opportunity to start at nickel. He had an opportunity a couple weeks ago. Then kind of had his ups and downs. Dane Jackson came in, didn't play that well, and he was also brought here to be more of that outside corner to compete for that job, which is now Mike Jackson's, and it looks like this is going to be a one-year situation for Dane in Carolina. It's unfortunate. The hamstring injury that cost him the first 6 games of the season back in training camp has really cost him an opportunity to show what he can do, and when he got an opportunity to show what he can do in the slot, really struggled at that spot. But Shaw went out there, according to Dave Canales, said took advantage of an opportunity. He made some tackles. He owned his leverage for the most part. There are things that he still needs to clean up. I was really proud of Shaw and really being focused on the week and for it to show up on game day. Or is it I keep getting this guy's name. It's Shaw, whatever. But Smith-Wade. Let's see. Jonathan Brooks also looked pretty good in that game. Dave Canales said, quote, I thought it was a great step from the first week to the second in terms of his confidence. You saw him break a couple tackles, finish runs aggressively. I was really pleased with the way that he took another step, and that's all that we expect. Weekly improvement to daily improvement, another great step for Jonathan. Then he was asked about just the rookie class overall. When you look at Xavier Legette, he's starting. What Jalen Coker's done as the undrafted free agent. Jonathan Brooks out there now. Shaw Smith-Wade. There we go. Not Shaw Smith-Wade. Him getting opportunities. Trevin Wallace. And he said, as far as are they turning a corner, he said, quote, it's been happening for weeks now. Guys just have been thrown out there to play that we're counting on with Xavier, with Coker, with Trevin and Shaw coming in and getting another chance. We're seeing these things pay dividends down the road as we continue to play and they keep stacking more football. And so far, Dan Morgan and his rookie class has looked really good as they've all gotten opportunities. They've all made impacts. One final thing Canales asked about was the drop passes that keep happening, and Legette's been a culprit of that. So really on Sunday was David Moore, and he said it's not a concern. They got to keep instilling confidence in those guys that go to him, and that it will work out in the end. So a little bit of concern, I would think, but he said it's not a concern at all. So there's a couple updates from Dave Canales following the Panthers 26-23 loss against Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Sunday at Bank of America Stadium. Keys of victory, do them on Fridays. On Tuesdays, I review those keys of victory, see how the Panthers did, whether they won or lost, and we'll do that here in just a moment on Locked on Panthers. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And looking at the line on Sunday in Philadelphia, holding steady as the Panthers are 12.5-point underdogs. Now, the money line has gone down a little bit. I think it was plus 570 on Sunday when we talked about it. Looking at it here on Monday as I record this Tuesday show, it's plus 480. Over-under is set there at 45.5. I believe that has gone up 1 point. So go over to FanDuel, check that out. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. And never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Let's go back and look at the keys, the victory I had on Friday ahead of the game against Tampa Bay on Sunday, where the Panthers fall in overtime. I called it a heart-wrenching. I mean, I don't know, just trying to find an adjective. It was definitely a game that was a tough pill to swallow. They should not have lost that game. They did. And here we are. The Panthers are 3-9. Will need to upset Philadelphia, where we just talked about there on FanDuel, 12.5-point underdogs heading to Philly, a team that's won 8 straight games and runs the damn ball. So it's going to be a tough proposition for Carolina up there in Philly on Sunday. We'll see how it plays out. They're playing well, especially offensively with Bryce Young. We'd like to see them maybe run the ball a little bit more. That's something we've all said all season long. So 13 weeks into it, it's probably just what they're going to be doing offensively. But TBD, an opportunity, I think, to be competitive, but that's not a game I think necessarily they will win or should win on Sunday based off of just all the information accumulated through 13 weeks of this NFL season. But again, any given Sunday, week-to-week league, it can happen. But going back to Friday, the keys of victory, #1, got to win the battle of familiarity. We knew that Todd Bowles employed Dave Canales last year, so Dave should be very familiar with Todd's defense, and Todd's defense is very familiar with Dave Canales' offense. And just looking at the Panthers, were having more success offensively against Todd Bowles than Liam Cohen's offense was having against Ejiro Evera's, which that was not really the battle, but there is familiarity there. Come to think of it, as Ejiro did spend time in LA, and Liam had as well. Can't recall whether their paths crossed at all. But as far as battle familiarity, Panthers had 282 yards of offense in the first 3 quarters, where Tampa had 181. But then Tampa ended up winning that yard advantage with 445 yards in the game, where Carolina had 367. Still a good total amount. Would have been enough. Was enough, I thought, to win the game, but unfortunately, that was not the case with that Chuba Hubbard fumble. They were only going to pick up maybe 5 or more yards, if that, before they kicked the field goal of Eddie Pinheiro, likely. The Bucs had 264 yards in the fourth quarter in overtime, scored on all 3 fourth-quarter drives. Just tough kind of collapse there for that defense in the fourth quarter, but then they bounced back in overtime, which you love to see after you had a rough quarter, after playing really good football for 3 quarters. You come out there, get that stop. And unfortunately, it was not enough for Carolina to be able to come out on top, as Chuba fumbled and defense could not get a second stop in overtime, where I just feel like you should be asked 1 time to get a stop. You should not have to be asked twice to get a stop in OT. Your offense has got to go out there and compliment the defense, and that did not happen, unfortunately, in the game on Sunday. They had to finish in the red zone, and they came into last week 10th in the NFL in red zone scoring, which I was actually surprised by, as they were scoring on 58% of their trips. Tampa Bay was ranked 16th in the NFL in red zone defense, allowing touchdowns in 56% of their opponents' trips. Carolina come out of this game 1 for 4 in the red zone. They were 3 for 10 in the red zone the past 2 weeks. They are 0 for 1 last game against Tampa there in goal-to-go situations. Dave Canales was asked about the red zone struggles and what's attributing to them. If he has concerns about him, he said, quote, I think it's just a matter of chemistry. I think it's time on task, some near misses for 2 weeks. These are certainly things that we have to hone in on throughout the week as we're looking at it and make sure that we're on the exact same page. When you talk about red zone passes, these are landmark throws. These are going to a spot. They're throwing to spots. They're throwing to areas within these concepts. And those are the things that we need to continue to improve upon. And if you were ever at training camp, you would see in the corner of the end zone, there's like a little arc that they had spray painted there. That was Bryce Young trying to throw to a spot. So they work on this all the way back in August and really late July when training camp gets going. And they do that throughout the season. And that just has not, for whatever reason, at least the last 2 weeks, as they were top 10 in the league going into last week, the last 2 weeks, it has not materialized into the Panthers being able to punch it in for 6 in a red zone against Kansas City and against Tampa. That will need to change on Sunday against Philadelphia if they want to go out there and win that game and somehow go on a run here in the final 5 weeks and get to 8-9 and then see how things break for them potentially in the NFC South. Number 3, Bryce Young needs to continue to progress. And, well, he did that. 26 for 46, 298 yards, 2 touchdowns. One of those was a rushing touchdown at an 83.4 passer rating. Looking in the first half, 186 yards at halftime. That was a career high for Bryce. He leads the NFL the last 2 weeks, as we talked about earlier, in big-time throws, according to Pro Football Focus. And looking just at his last 4 starts now, 59.09% completion percentage. He's averaged 214.5 yards, 5 touchdowns. One of those are rushing touchdown, 1 interception, 1 turnover, period, 85.4 passer rating. That happening his last 4 starts. We are seeing Bryce Young turn a corner. And because of that, it looks like things are headed right now in the direction for Bryce Young to not just be the starter for the final 5 weeks of the season, but to be the starter again in 2025. And then the Panthers really make a big decision in the offseason 2026 about Bryce Young's potential contract situation, but the 5th-year option and what that will look like for the future of the quarterback position here in Carolina. And I'm certainly rooting for the guy to play well this week and play well the following 4 and play well all next season and be the answer to this question Carolina's been trying to solve since Cam Newton's body fell apart 5 years ago. All right, it's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast for a Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe or follow the show for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where on Wednesday I'll be back here answering your weekly Wednesday mailbag questions. So either at me or DM me to get those questions into me right now, as tomorrow is Wednesday, by the way. But in the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole. As always, keep pounding, and I'll talk to you all on Wednesday.